May the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Yep, this is the place. I haven't been here for so long, but it's just as magnificent as I remember it. I can almost hear the people in the lobby saying, "Hey, isn't that David's kid?" Oh, excuse me. You caught me daydreaming out loud. Let me introduce myself to you. I'm Joshua Carpenter, but you can just call me Josh. And yes, I'm David's kid. When I was younger, growing up here in Houston, that's what people called me. "Hey, David's kid." They didn't necessarily know my first name, but they knew of my father and of the little kingdom that he built here in Houston called Carpenter's Condominiums. He sent me here because we're having some problems with some of our Houston tenants in his condominium. And he wants me to help straighten things out, but we'll get to that later. First of all, let me tell you about my dad. When he was younger, he had one dream: to create a place that people would love to call home. And so he got into the construction business. He took classes in architecture and design. He learned about structural engineering. He even worked a lot of construction jobs as a laborer. He wanted to learn about the business from the ground floor up, if you will. He would always tell me, "Josh, you don't want to start a project if you don't know what you're doing. Because the last thing you want to have happen is to get partway through the project and not be able to finish it." Well, sometimes that happens. A fellow gets a bright idea, but he doesn't think it through. He doesn't really count the cost of what his endeavor will cost. And so he starts his project, and then he runs into problems. Maybe money problems, maybe problems with being up to code, maybe it's labor problems, maybe it's material problems, whatever it is. He started the project, gets partway through, and boom, he can't complete it. And there it sits, half done. And that doesn't just happen to the little guys. I don't know if any of you have heard of the Cathedral of St. John the Divine in New York City. This is a mammoth cathedral. It is 2 football fields long. They started construction in 1892. And all through those decades, for almost 130 years, they've had nothing but problems. In fact, in 2001, there was a fire that damaged much of the structure. Well, they got the mess cleaned up from the fire. But here, after almost 130 years since they broke ground, there is still no completion date for this cathedral. It stands there 2/3 finished. The locals have started calling it the Cathedral of St. John the Unfinished. My dad would never let that happen to one of his projects. I remember when he started his first project, the one here in Houston. It was 1997. I was about 10 years old. He wanted nothing but the best for this home that he wanted to create. He spared no expense or effort. Every day he would go down to the job site, not to spy on the crews, but to encourage them and to make sure that they had what they needed to do the work they needed to accomplish that day. Sometimes he would take me on his inspection trips. I always enjoyed those days. He'd say, Josh, come with me. Come see what your old man's creating. So we'd head downtown, and as the structure got taller, we would take that elevator going on the outside of the building, and the wind was rushing through our hair, and when we got to the top of the building, we had a beautiful view of downtown Houston, Discovery Green. It was breathtaking. And there I would be at my dad's side, and he would say, Josh, does this look good to you? Well, I was just a little kid, but I could tell from the look on my dad's face that it looked good to him, and that was good enough for me. My father never believed in cutting corners. He always wanted things to be the best. He would explain to me, Josh, the families that are going to live here, the moms and dads and the kids, they need a home that will take care of them. When they get home at the end of a long day, they should just be able to relax. A place where they can play and rest and just enjoy being together as families. They shouldn't have to worry about maintenance issues like plumbing problems or leaky windows. And so my dad made things the best that he could. In his eyes, it was perfection. Well, that's my dad. And even though my dad is a powerful individual, he would never plaster his name across the front of the building. He's powerful, but he doesn't have a big ego. No, he's happy that right next to the entrance of the building there is a bronze plaque, and it has a message written in several different languages so that whoever walks by can read the plaque, because that plaque tells the story about how much my dad loves the people who live here, even if they don't live in his building, what he sometimes refers to as his little kingdom. Even if they don't live in his little kingdom, even if they live elsewhere in the city, he still loves them. He wants them to know that, because that's my dad. Well, after the first project here in Houston was so successful and popular, it wasn't long that there was a second condo and a third condo, and now he has 7 magnificent high-rises in cities across the country. There's the one in New York that overlooks Central Park, the one on the Gold Coast of Chicago overlooking Lake Michigan. There's the one in Seattle, in Los Angeles. There's also one in New Orleans. And there's always one that I forget. Oh yeah, there's even one in Indianapolis, Indiana. When he announced that project, I was really confused. I'm thinking, why would he build a luxury high-rise in central Indiana of all places? And he said to me, you know, those folks in flyover country, sometimes they feel forgotten. But they deserve a nice place to live as well. That's my dad. Well, with all of these different properties, my dad has to make sure that the business end of things gets tended to. And that's why I'm here. It seems that some of the Houston tenants are acting like they own their units. Now, most of the units are owned by the residents, but we do rent some of them out. And we have these tenants who have decided that they don't have to pay their rent. They're acting like owners even though they are clearly renters, and we even have a lease with them. So my dad has sent me here to hopefully smooth out the matter. You see, my dad is a patient man. He has patience in abundance. Some people say he is patient to a fault, like it's a character flaw. And he's also a very forgiving individual. So he doesn't want to put these people out on the street. He doesn't want to evict them. He wants them to live in the home that he's created for them. He wants them to stay in his little kingdom, as he calls it. Let me tell you a story about my dad's patience and forgiveness. He had a friend who wanted to start a business, and he approached my dad to be an investor. And my dad loaned him a good amount of money. So this friend of his started the business, but then the economy slowed down, the business tanked, and you guessed it, he couldn't repay my dad the investment money. Now, my dad would have been within his rights to sue this guy into the poorhouse, but he didn't. You know what my dad did? He forgave the debt. When I heard about that, I said, "Dad, that was a huge amount of money." And he said to me, "Josh, I love this man. He's my friend. His friendship is worth more to me than the money that I lost. In fact, losing the friendship would have cost me more than losing the money." That's my dad. And so he is this very powerful but compassionate, very patient and forgiving man. But this situation with the tenants in Houston had to be addressed. So my dad initially sent one of his attorneys to just meet with the people, not to threaten, not to intimidate, just to sit down with them and find out why they haven't been paying the rent. Maybe some problem has cropped up that we're unaware of. Maybe we need to fix something for them. And to find out when they might plan to start paying the rent again. You wouldn't believe the way these people reacted, or should I say overreacted. They treated our attorney so disrespectfully, they pretty much sent him packing and cussed him out as he went out the door. So my dad sent another attorney. And during their very unproductive meeting, because the renters were so hostile toward him, during that meeting, somehow his car got keyed and his tires got slashed. Now, of course, no one knows who did it, but it doesn't take a big imagination to figure it out. So my father sent another attorney. He had another very unproductive meeting, very contentious because these tenants aren't willing to listen to reason. So after he left that meeting, on his way home, his brakes went out and he got into a serious accident. Again, there's no explanation for this mysterious brake failure, but it almost cost the guy his life. That's when my dad decided to send me. He said, "Josh, I value these people. I want them to live in the home I've created for them. I want them to stay in my little kingdom there in Houston. Talk to them. Let them know that I don't want to put them out on the street. I don't want to see them weeping. Tell them that I think of them like they're my family, that they're my children, that I'm taking care of through this condo. Assure them that they can live there as long as they want, as long as they pay the rent. Just try to talk some sense into them, son. And Josh, remember, I love you. Give me a call after you have your meeting with them to let me know how things went." So that's why I'm here. And although my dad thinks that they will respect me because I am his son, I have my doubts about these people based on how they've been acting. But one thing I don't doubt is that if they mistreat me or harm me or do something even worse, my Father's fury will rain down on them like they could never believe. He will not hesitate not just to evict them, but to bring them into court and have them brought to justice and see if they prefer a prison cell to a penthouse. But even after all of that ugliness that might ensue, I know what my dad will do next. He will welcome other families into his home, into his little kingdom. That's my dad. I actually hope that this meeting goes smoothly and that things can get straightened out rather quickly, because as long as I'm here in the South, I plan to visit our property in New Orleans. The people living there don't know me or my dad, so we've sent an advance man to kind of prepare the way for my visit. I can't wait to meet the people living there. I look forward to them saying, "Hey, Josh, we've been waiting to see you. It's glad you could be with us." And I'll tell them, "You know, it's good to see you too. And I'm looking forward to getting to know you. But first of all, let me tell you about the man who created the home where you're living, his little kingdom that you're a part of. Let me tell you about my dad." Well, they're playing my song. I hear the tenants gathered in the lobby, and I hear them saying, "Hey, isn't that David's kid?" So it's time for me to go meet with them. And we'll see how this visit goes, for them and for me.